Hello and welcome to this section on dependency injection. So let's understand what is dependency injection. It's basically creating a relationship between two objects. So let's understand how you can do it via different ways. Okay, so after completing section, you will be able to understand what is this concept of dependency injection. We will learn about dependency injection in two different ways. Then we'll work with exercises, resources and quiz using the dependency injection. Okay, so let's go ahead and understand what is dependency injection. Hello and welcome to the lecture on understanding what is dependency injection. As the name suggests, it is basically dependency between the two different objects. And obviously when you have a parent object and a child object, how do you create a relationship between a parent object and a child object? We have seen some scenario in inheritance how a child can share parent, but you have to understand this is a concept altogether, wherein in OOPs you're working with objects. So you have to be very clear how the dependency injection works, how you are creating relationship between two objects. Okay, there are different ways to do it. I'm going to show you two different ways and I'm going to show you what is the best practice that you have to follow. Okay, so let's first understand the problem, then we'll try to do an example to understand the solution of it. Okay, so here is a problem. You have a parent class called course, and course basically talks about the course title, course details, and then course price, and what are the description of the course, where is the promo video for the course. Okay, then you have a child class which is called as lessons class. Lessons class talks about the lessons inside that course. Okay, and lessons typically extends the course. Okay, there's a very good relationship between parent and a child. Parent is course, child is lessons, which extends from the course. Now the problem is when you create an instance, right? When you create an instance of a course, you only can access course details, right? When you create the course called as 1, this one will be assigned to the course ID. And when you create a lesson object, then that lesson object refer to only the lesson data. But how do you create a relationship between course and a lesson? That's basically the concept of dependency injection. How do you create a dependency between a course and a lesson? So there are two different ways to do it. That's what we're going to learn in the next example. Okay, for now you have to understand this challenge. You will always be faced with this dependency injection problem. Okay, when you have a parent and a child, you will always be thinking about how do I create a relationship between two, and the relationship between course and a lesson is rightly assigned. Okay, so let's look at an example to understand how it can be done. Hello and welcome to the lecture on doing an example on dependency injection. So we're trying to understand how to do a dependency injection. So I'll go to OOPS folder and I'll create another folder called DP, dependency injection, and we'll create an example here. We call it as a tight coupling. Okay, this is way some people follow this method, and this is not a right method, but we'll try to understand this, then we'll understand the proper method. Okay, well, tight coupling is one of the pattern that people follow to do a coupling between two different objects. Okay, so let's say you have a class course, and then you have a class lesson which extends from course. Okay, and we said it has the CID and lesson has LID. Okay, and then via the constructor we basically set that value. Okay, and similarly for this constructor you set the lessons value. This is the LID and LID. Okay, there's a classic way of creating course and a lesson. So if you have a course, then you are passing the course as 1, and if you have a lesson, then you are passing it as 100. Okay, and then you convert it to a lesson. Okay, now the challenge is, how do you create a relationship between these two? Okay, that's what we are trying to understand. And then one of the concept is tight coupling, and we will not be following this approach. We'll do another example to understand how it can be done with a better dependency injection between the two objects. Okay, so for now there's one method where you can define the object of the lesson. So you can say lid object, you can pass the LID here, and you can create the object of a lesson via the LID here. Okay, this is called as tight coupling. Okay, and then here you don't have to create lessons class now, you can create like this. Okay, so this way when you create a course, the course basically has object of lesson. So how do you access that? So you can say course of LID object of, you can, if this has a method called show lessons, let's say if I have show lessons, okay, then you are able to access the show lessons via this. Okay, what you're trying to do is you're trying to store the lesson object inside the parent. So parent actually holds all the child information. Okay, this is called as tight coupling, wherein the parent creates all the child instance. Okay, the problem here is this looks good. This looks good because the parent has all the child information, it knows who are their childs, and it holds that instance at parent level. But what happens in the future, you have something called as quiz class which extends course. Okay, now the problem here is, in this scenario the problem is the course doesn't know about quiz. So when there is a new class extended, okay, you have to go back to the parent and change it. So now you have to do like this, right? You have to have a quiz ID, and then you have to have a quiz object, and then you have to create like this, and you have to say quiz, and you have to say quiz ID. Okay, and then you have to pass in the QID. Okay, and then you have to create a quiz ID, let's say 200, right? So it's not a good practice because you have to change everything, you have to change all the programs, right? And then you have to make sure whether anything is broken or not. So you're changing from top to bottom. Okay, this is the approach of tight coupling. You start from starting and you end with ending. But OOPS is basically bottom up approach, right? And it has to be independent. When you try to add components, your parent should not change, your parent should remain same. Maybe wherever you're adding your code, that piece code should be changed. Okay, that's the example we're going to learn in the next example. But for now, understand this is one of the way of adding dependency between the objects. Now course can access lesson methods, and also it can access the quiz method, and course know who are its lessons and what are its quiz. By passing this value, it knows what are their IDs. Okay, so there's a relationship between course and lessons and quiz, but it is a top-down approach, and it is called as a tight coupling, wherein parent creates all the objects and keep track of all the objects and relationship between the parent and the child. Okay, the main problem here is, if something new class comes up, you have to start editing the code from the parent. Okay, so that's the lecture on how to work with dependency injection using one of the example. So in the next example, we'll see the right way. Okay, so that's all for this lecture. I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on dependency injection. So let's see a bottom-up approach and the right approach to do dependency injection. So we'll take the same example and we'll convert it into a way where it is extendable and it is the right way to do dependency injection. So we'll call it as dependency injection. Okay, so here we have course, lesson and quiz. Okay, so first thing we want is, we don't want parent to know about its child. Okay, we want parent to exist as it is. Okay, this is parent definition. It's very clean. The parent is parent. It knows about himself. It doesn't know what is his grandchild, right? Never know who is our grandchild, right? So it only knows what it is. Okay, and the lesson, when he extends, they know about their parents, right? And all they have to do is, they have the constructor. And even the quiz, let's say quiz is one of the grandchild, and you have a QID, and then you have a QID here, QID and QID, right? So now you have a quiz. Okay, what you typically do is, for the course you create course, and for the lessons when you create, okay, you mention who is his parent. Okay, you mention the parent for that lesson. So let's say it's lesson. Okay, so when you create a lesson, you are passing the object of a parent. Okay, and then when you create a constructor, you know how do you assign the type hinting as well, and how do you get that value. So you can say course, you can see C, and then using C you can say $this CID is equal to $C CID. Okay, now the lesson is assigning its parent. Okay, it's not parent is assigning its child, child is assigning to its parent. So now whatever extension that you are doing, okay, it's easy for you to extend the parent, right? Similarly, when you can do the course here, and you can use the same example here, right? And then when you do the quiz, then you can passing the course parent. Okay, this is the right way of doing dependency injection. Okay, it's very clean, and parent never has to change, and everything that you're changing is what you're writing that class. If you're implementing a new class, you're only working on that class, and then you already created a relationship from that class to the parent class. That's how you should think about creating relationship. Creating relationship should happen from the bottoms up. So okay, so top level, whatever class is there, you don't disturb it, but at the child level, whatever you're trying to write, from there you create a relationship with your parent. Okay, and that can be done by passing this object via the constructor parameter, and then you link that up from your constructor as well. So that's the example of right way of doing dependency injection, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the exercise section. Let's do an exercise to understand dependency injection concept using the parent and the class. So let's say you have a university parent class and a student parent class. So show the dependency injection. How can you create an university instance and a student instance, and how the student instance get access to its parent university instance. Okay, whatever example we have seen previously, you can just convert it using this university and student, and try to show the dependency injection concept. Okay, I'll leave you with your own imagination of writing the methods, defining the properties, but try to show the dependency injection concept. Okay, so pause this video here and do this exercise now. So let's look at the material folder, and then we'll understand how this dependency injection can be done. So we are doing an exercise to understand how a student class can have dependency on the university class, that is its parent class. Okay, how do you create dependency? So you define the university class with a property and a constructor to set that value. Then you have student name with a constructor, and in the constructor you are passing the instance of the university, that is parent, and using its parent instance you are setting its parents properties. And then when you create the university instance and the student instance, you are passing the parent university instance to the student child instance. Okay, and that's how the student get to access the university details as well. Okay, so you have created a relationship between student and the university by passing the university object details in the constructor of the student. Okay, and this way the student will apply all the details from that instance and copy over to its own parent and then start using it in its own relationship. Okay, so that's how you basically do the dependency injection from bottom to up. From bottom to top means you prepare all your objects, then you give it to your child class, and child class will set the hierarchy for its parents. Okay, so this is a good practice that you have to follow whenever you want to do a relationship. Try to follow this kind of concept. Okay, well, tight coupling will make you always change your parents. Okay, it's a good practice that you don't change the existing code. Whatever new code that you're writing, you're doing an extendability of that existing code, and dependency injection via this method actually improves your extendability of your code. You don't have to change your parent, you just keep changing your childs. Okay, so that's the exercise, and do practice this because this is gonna be your everyday's job of creating dependency between the objects, and this will help you to think through if you're doing a dependency, this is the right way to do it, and logically you have to understand how this thing works. Okay, so that's the exercise on dependency injection, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome to the summary section of dependency injection. So by now you should be able to understand what is dependency injection, and you should know how to define the dependency injection between two different objects. And I hope you have worked with exercises, resources and quiz to understand this concept very well. Okay, so that's all on this lectures on dependency injection, and I'll see you in the next topic.